Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Nearly 1 year since the Russian invasion, a surprise visit is bringing hope to Ukrainians, including those here in San Diego. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. President Joe Biden arrived in the capital of Kyiv today to meet with President Vladimir Zelensky. As Laura Aguirre reports, the visit was designed to send a strong message to Moscow about America's support for Ukraine.
Russia's aim was to wipe Ukraine off the map. Putin's war of conquest is failing.
President Joe Biden calling out Russia's Vladimir Putin during a surprise visit to Ukraine Monday. Traveling in near secrecy, President Biden's arrival in Kyiv comes just days before the one-year anniversary of Russia's invasion.
1 year later, Kyiv stands, and Ukraine stands. Democracy stands.
Despite being in an active war zone, the two world leaders talked while walking outside, air raid sirens ringing out. In a visit to St. Michael's Cathedral, the presidents each laid a wreath for Ukraine's fallen soldiers. The entire trip highly symbolic, President Biden wanting to make it clear to his Russian counterpart that the U.S. and Ukraine will not be divided.
He's counting on us not sticking together. He thought he could outlast us. I don't think he's thinking that right now.
The U.S. pledge of support includes further sanctions on Russia and an aid package worth $500 million, but not the F-16 fighter jets that Ukraine has been asking for. The president is hoping to thread the needle between all-out provocation with Russia and committing American support for Ukraine.
We're going to be with you, Mr. President, for as long as it takes.
We'll do it.
Laura Aguirre, KPBS News.
President Biden's support for Ukraine was felt here in San Diego, from a visiting professor at UCSD to the House of Ukraine in Balboa Park. KPBS reporter Kitty Alvarado tells us why they're feeling hopeful.
Is that Kyiv? It looks like Kyiv. I was like, wow, we were actually very surprised that he actually did come to Kyiv, which is great.
Orissa Barua is a board member at the House of Ukraine in Balboa Park. She says seeing President Joe Biden walking around the Ukrainian capital with President Zelensky sends an incredible message of hope.
It gives hope because it shows solidarity. It shows that, the good should prevail. Hopefully that's a sign to Russia to stop this, and as soon as possible.
I was very surprised, it's outstanding, such.
Ukrainian historian Ihor Lilo, who is in residence at UC San Diego, says this moment is one for the books. He said an American president has not visited Ukraine since George W. Bush, and
it's the first time in American history, in modern American history, the president of United States visited country in war and country where no American troops are right now.
He said there's no doubt the symbolism is powerful.
This short visit just show for all of Ukrainians, we have hope. We are responsible about Ukraine. We stand with Ukraine. So it's a symbol, but in the time of the war, we used a different kind of the weapons. One of the mostly important weapons, it's a hope. So it's a good, it's like a good opportunity for every nation and for every soldiers.
He said he has students and friends who have been killed in this war.
War has only one positive moment. Right now, all of the people united.
And his brother is on the front lines fighting in this war.
My brother's name is Orest. Every day I'm just say for him, be careful, save your life, and be back home with the victory. We're waiting you.
He says for those reluctant to send help, the war may end up costing so much more, something we've seen before.
United States, not to be very happy, be part of the second war, except the moment when the Pearl Harbor happened. So if we tolerate the evil like Putin, like Russia today, we will pay more in future.
A future Barua hopes is different for her daughter and her grandchildren.
That was the same stories she told me when I was a kid, and now I have to tell my child the same stories. I hope my daughter's kids not gonna hear the stories, and have to deal with what we're all dealing right now with.
Kitty Alvarado, KPBS News.
There is new damage and fear in the border area near Turkey and Syria. A magnitude 6.3 earthquake hit today in the Turkish province of Hatay, less than 2 weeks after a 7.8 hit the region. Deaths are now estimated at 45,000, and there are reports of collapsed buildings from this latest earthquake, resulting in at least 3 deaths and more than 200 injuries. On this President's Day, the Friends of Friendship Park had a question for President Biden about his legacy. Does he want to be known as the president who finished Donald Trump's border wall, or as the president who saved Friendship Park? KPBS reporter Alexander Nguyen has the story.
Biden! Biden! Save Friendship Park!
Through chants and songs, the Friends of Friendship Parks are sending a direct message to the Biden administration. Save Friendship Park. Last week, Customs and Border Protection started construction to replace the fence at Friendship Park. CBP says it will preserve the 18-foot fence around Friendship Park to preserve access to the park. But John Fenestill from Friends of Friendship Park says that's not entirely true.
This is one of the great tragedies of these 30-foot walls as they eliminate views in and out of space. On the Mexican side, right now at Friendship Park, from a lookout, you can see all the way up the San Diego coast to downtown San Diego and Point Loma, and on a clear day all the way up to Southern California.
This white wall right here is about 18 foot tall, similar to the one at Friendship Park. And this is the new wall that Border Protection is building. And right here, you can see through it, but if you look sideways, it becomes opaque. And that, the group says, will ruin the experience of the park for visitors.
It doesn't make sense because 30 feet at Friendship Park will completely change the visual landscape, the experience.
Pedro Rios is the director of the American Friends Service Committee. He says the 30-foot fence will lead to more people hurt or dying from falls off the fence.
There's been a 5-fold increase in people going to the trauma centers locally. That is a result of people climbing the border walls and falling as a result of that throughout the 60 miles of the San Diego sector. It's likely the case that will increase wherever there are 30-foot border walls, including that possibility at Friendship Park.
CBP says the new fence is needed for border infrastructure.
Add one more foot of wall at Friendship Park, please.
Alexander Nguyen, KPBS News.
The city of Chula Vista's new tenant protection ordinance goes into effect on March 1st. KPBS reporter Melissa May says it's closing the gap of no-fault eviction loopholes, but may also have some unintended consequences for landlords.
The new ordinance is an effort to limit no-fault evictions, provide more tenant relocation assistance, and protect tenants from landlord harassment and retaliation.
It also sets a precedent, right, for other cities. We're in San Diego County, we have probably the weakest tenant protections in the whole state. We're behind, we're like the only major city who allows these types of evictions to continue to happen.
The new law was passed by the Chula Vista City Council last fall after tenants reported their landlord was evicting them to remodel the property. This ordinance now protects tenants from this type of eviction.
Because of investors that are coming in, buying up properties, kicking people out, and then just jacking it up to market rate. So this is not only going to help protect tenants so they can continue to stay in their homes, it also is going to help keep our housing affordable.
Gilberto Vera is the senior attorney of the housing team at Legal Aid Society of San Diego.
That's kind of like what the goal of this ordinance is, and that's why the protections really are centered around no-fault evictions, is preventing displacement of tenants who are not doing anything wrong, especially tenants who are particularly vulnerable to falling into homelessness.
Vera says that Chula Vista will now collect data about how many people are being displaced by no-fault evictions. He says no one has ever done that, and it will help make policy choices in the future.
Any no-fault eviction notice that a landlord is going to be serving on a tenant at Chula Vista, they will now be required to file that notice with the city within 3 business days of serving that no-fault notice on the tenant.
The ordinance has been opposed by the Southern California Rental Housing Association. The group's president, Lucinda Lilly, warns there could be unintended consequences for landlords.
Rental housing providers being fined or, God forbid, face criminal charges for having communication with their residents.
Lilly says many Chula Vista properties were built in the 80s and need significant renovations. But with the new substantial remodel requirements, many properties will continue to deteriorate if a landlord can't afford to relocate the tenant.
We don't need to lose more housing off of the stock that we have. And then people who don't have the ability to move back into their own properties, even if they themselves have experienced financial hardship due to any number of reasons.
She says this ordinance will significantly affect active duty military homeowners who rent out their homes while they're deployed and then have to pay their tenants a relocation fee that could be up to 2 months' rent. This particular ordinance only applies to tenants in the city of Chula Vista. The city of San Diego is currently working on a similar version of these protections. Melissa May, KPBS News.
More than 1,400 healthcare workers recently voted to unionize at East County's only hospital, but the vote still isn't certified. KPBS health reporter Matt Hoffman says sharp Grossmont officials are challenging the election results.
Sharp Grossmont nursing assistants, pharmacy techs, and other healthcare workers recently voted to join SEIU United Healthcare Workers West. The vote was 55% in favor, but Sharp is challenging the result.
So we just think it's silly and ridiculous attempt by Sharp to, delay the inevitable.
Renee Saldana is a spokesperson for United Healthcare Workers West.
We're just ready to, move forward with this, and we know the workers are fired up there. And again, they're ready to, get this election certified.
Before voting ended, Sharp officials filed a claim with federal labor officials alleging intimidating and threatening organizing efforts from the union. We asked Sharp for a copy of their objection letter, but all the spokesperson would say is it's related to the earlier claim of intimidating organizing efforts. The union called that claim frivolous and a last-minute attempt to influence the election.
A claim of intimidation and coercion in connection with a unionizing election is not uncommon.
Legal analyst Dan Eaton says during a vote to unionize, these type of claims can come from either side. A spokesperson for the National Labor Relations Board says the objections are being reviewed and a regional director will decide to dismiss them or order a hearing. Eaton says the process could take months.
The stakes are very high in connection with unionization, which is why these campaigns are so hard fought.
Eaton says a decision will ultimately come down to the strength of the evidence, and it could wind up in the courts. One thing is for certain, the results of the union election at Sharp Grossmont are still not certified, and bargaining can't begin until that happens. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
National reaction continues following the news that former U.S. President Jimmy Carter has begun receiving hospice care at his home. The former president turned 98 years old last year and is the oldest living president. Isabel Rosales has more from Plains, Georgia.
Lord, we'd be amiss this morning if we did not lift President Carter to you.
Sunday morning in Plains, Georgia, it was packed for Sunday school at a service at Maranatha Baptist Church. This is where former President Jimmy Carter taught his traditional Sunday school in his hometown for years, until his health forced him to give it up in 2020. On Saturday, the news came that the 98-year-old former president has decided to spend his remaining time at home with his family and to receive hospice care instead of additional medical intervention, according to the Carter Center. In 2015, former President Carter announced he had survived brain and liver cancer. In 2019, he had surgery for a broken hip and received 14 stitches after hitting his head. Then he was treated for a minor pelvic fracture before undergoing surgery to relieve pressure on his brain. I love you! In 2022, the Carters were seen out enjoying the 25th annual Peanut Festival Parade in Plains. They were seen riding in a red 1946 Ford convertible while waving at the crowd. Meanwhile, wishes for comfort and peace are pouring in on social media for the former president. Carter's grandson and former Georgia State Senator Jason Carter posted this tweet, saying in part he visited his grandparents and they are at peace.
When I was sick, he sat with me for an hour. Whether you believe in his political persuasions or whatever you think, you know for a fact, being here, that they're genuine people that care.
In Plains, Georgia, I'm Isabel Rosales reporting.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
The Catholic community in Los Angeles gathered to pray for a bishop who was fatally shot over the weekend. Today, the LA Sheriff's Department announced that a person has been arrested in the killing of Bishop David O'Connell. On Saturday, the 69-year-old was found dead in his home in Hacienda Heights with a gunshot wound. Parishioners are in shock.
Changed our lives. He was very supportive, always working for the good of people.
He's just a beautiful human being. It's just hard to believe anybody would even consider hurting him in any way.
And this afternoon, the Sheriff's Department said the suspect is the husband of a housekeeper who worked for Bishop O'Connell. Investigators are still determining a motive. Police departments across the country are rebuilding their ranks. They're implementing new strategies to attract officers, reform training, and begin a new chapter of public service. Mike Valerio introduces us to some recruits who are answering the call.
From their final inspection as recruits to the jubilation of being Los Angeles County's newest sworn sheriff's deputies. Mother of two, Daisy Morris says she'll never forget adding her law enforcement family to her ecstatic extended family.
They were proud. You know, they know I've been wanting this for a long time.
But even though this graduation is packed, recruitment for law enforcement nationwide is down.
What kind of deficit are you dealing with right now?
Right now, we have approximately 1,100 vacancies.
LA Sheriff Robert Luna took the helm of the department in December, and a new strategy he's pursuing, speeding up the hiring process.
We're testing multiple times a month. We're giving people opportunities, shortening the time that we're testing.
We're taking a little different approach now, where we want to make it a little bit more intimate.
Captain Aaron McCraney of the Los Angeles Police Department is hosting the LAPD's first ever hiring mixer in the community. Not in a government building, but here in the heart of Watts.
I'm Middle Eastern myself, so I want to bring to my own community, like, women could become police officers.
I wanted to transition into something that I could, still use my skills and, actually make a difference.
In Washington, D.C.,
they offer the housing incentive, and then the $20,000 signing bonus was also nice.
Recruit Alexandra Salmon moved from Long Island to D.C., where starting salary for Metropolitan Police officers is just over $66,400. Add to that a $20,000 hiring bonus. First-year pay now totals $86,400.
This should be, how do we go big in this country?
Chuck Wexler, head of the Police Executive Research Forum, says there's recruitment and then there's broader reform.
Maybe we ought to think about, 10 regional academies around the country that teach what we think professional policing should be.
These fresh faces know it's up to them, writing the next chapter of policing and setting the tone for the people they serve.
If I could leave them with a positive interaction to go home to, that's what I look forward to every day.
In Los Angeles, Mike Valerio, KPBS News.
San Diego's young people will be allowed to ride public transit for free a little while longer. The Youth Opportunity Pass is being extended through June of next year. It allows anyone age 18 or younger to ride MTS buses and trolleys and the Sprinter and Coaster rail lines. SANDAG says its next goal is to come up with funding to make the passes permanent and expand the program up to age 24.
Lots of changes coming up over the course of the next couple of days, so our quiet period of weather about to come to an end. Still tranquil overnight, becoming windy later on Tuesday, followed by an active period of weather running from Tuesday night and Wednesday all the way into the upcoming weekend. Here comes the wind. Tuesday evening into Wednesday evening, high wind warnings out San Diego. Those winds will be from a westerly fashion, very choppy surf, dangerous surf conditions. And we're going to be talking about some wind speeds topping 40, perhaps even 50 miles per hour. High wind warnings also out over the mountainous terrain. So again, here's a look at those wind speeds. 40, 50, 60 miles per hour. Mountainous terrain winds gusting 60 to 80 miles per hour with the potential. Some areas could even be higher than that. And that could lead, of course, to some power outages, very difficult traveling conditions. Winter storm watch is also out. Snow levels are going to be lowering big time. That's an indication of the cold air that's coming. Starting at around 6,000 feet, dropping down below 3,000 feet, even 2,500 feet by Wednesday. So that's Tuesday night to Wednesday. We'll see snow levels drop. Snow coming out toward Mount Laguna, Julian, and Pine Valley. For tonight, quiet for now. We're dropping into the 40s, 42 Oceanside, fully 45 Chula Vista, Borrego Springs, 46 Mount Laguna, down to 31. Strong winds out ahead of our powerful cold front that will be traversing much of the state as we go throughout the day, into the evening, and also into the overnight. 63. As we talk about the high temperature, San Diego, Ramona 63, Oceanside 62, Mount Laguna topping off at 42 degrees. And then by Wednesday, cooler pocket of air settles in. We'll be talking about some wet weather with showers toward the coast and into the interior valleys and snow over the higher terrain. Let's lay it all out. And again, those historical averages, we're going to be going 10 to 15 degrees below that here as we go down the road. Wow, look at that. 52 on Thursday out of the coast with wind and rain. Also becoming quite windy over the interior valleys later on Tuesday night to Wednesday, and wet as we go from Wednesday right into the start of the weekend. Mountainous terrain here, as I mentioned, snow levels dropping drastically as we work our way throughout your Wednesday into your Wednesday night and Thursday. Snow showers continuing along with the wind right into Friday and throughout the deserts. Also talking about a lot of wind coming up Tuesday and Wednesday, followed by a period of cool air and some wet weather Thursday into Saturday. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Justin Pavic.
Home prices in some California cities are seeing significant drops. Cole Higgins has a look at where prices have fallen and why economists say more declines may be on the way.
Despite the housing market still seeing soaring prices across the country, some regions are actually seeing double-digit price drops from their peak last year.
We will see house prices continue to weaken in different parts of the country. Now, of course, house prices rose very strongly during much of the pandemic, and we're just retracing some of those price gains.
According to the National Association of Realtors, the price for a single-family median home increased 4% in the fourth quarter from a year ago to more than $378,000. But their data also revealed in some markets, prices are actually declining. San Francisco had the biggest price drop in the country, down 6.1% from a year ago and 21% lower from its peak. A similar decline in nearby San Jose, California, which was the most expensive place to purchase a home in the U.S. in the fourth quarter, with a median price of more than $1.5 million. The latest data finds that price is down 5.8% from a year ago and 17% off its peak.
But nonetheless, for folks that have bought a home in the last 6-12 months, it's going to be somewhat painful because they're going to see the value of their home fall, here pretty significantly.
In Southern California, home prices in Anaheim were down 1.6% from a year ago. And in Los Angeles, prices are down 1.3%. Outside of the Golden State, several cities also saw declines, including Boulder, Colorado, down 2%, Boise, Idaho, where prices fell 3.4%, and Austin, Texas, where prices are down 1.3%. For Consumer Watch, I'm Cole Higgins.
And just last week, KPBS reporter Kitty Alvarado covered the drop in home prices predicted by UCSD, and you can watch that story anytime on the KPBS YouTube page. The San Diego State men's basketball team is in the first place in the Mountain West, and fans are excited for what's to come. KPBS reporter Jacob Ayer spoke to SDSU students ahead of the March Madness tournament.
Defense coming over by Fresno. Bradley, the long three, dials it in.
After a hard-fought victory at Fresno State last week, the San Diego State men's basketball team is ranked number 22 in the country by the Associated Press Top 25 poll and number 20 by the USA Today Coaches poll. Students are taking notice and showing up for their team at their home arena.
There's nothing like it every single time. Like they're just loud, raucous. It sucks to be the other team, that's for sure.
The students are getting excited. It's getting closer to the end of the season, and you can tell the campus is getting excited and the excitement's being heard.
The Aztecs are in sole possession of first place in the Mountain West Conference, but Coach Brian Dutcher says they can't take anything for granted.
Every time we play, it's for first place. So we've got a game lead with 4 to go. We know the schedule ahead of us is tough, starting with Colorado State and then road games at New Mexico, at Boise, and then finish with Wyoming. So the nice thing is we control our own destiny.
With college basketball's biggest games just around the corner, fans like freshman Sydney Gibson and Vanessa Galvan are excited to watch their first game in the student section tomorrow and for what's ahead.
Then we're excited to see how they play. I like basketball. Hopefully they make it to March Madness. That was interesting to watch last year, especially because I was coming here. So that'll be fun.
The Aztecs are currently 21-5 overall and 12-2 in the Mountain West. Guard Adam Seiko says the team is also looking to build off of last year's March Madness appearance.
In the back of our heads, we want to make the tournament. We're in a pretty good position for that right now. But we try not to talk about it as much. We got to focus on winning regular season conference championship.
Tomorrow, the team squares off against the Colorado State Bulldogs at Viejas Arena at 8 p.m. March Madness kicks off on March 14th. Jacob Ayer, KPBS News.
And here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. NPR's Morning Edition has an interview with Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders about his new book, It's Okay to Be Angry About Capitalism. And KPBS Midday Edition will have a story of a Holocaust survivor and longtime San Diego resident who recently passed away. And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Good night.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. By viewers like you. Thank you.